November, word leaked out that WikiLeaks might have files on Bank of America, allegedly revealing, quote, an ecosystem of corruption. Now, this month, we learned that the bank's law firm, Hunton & Williams, solicited proposals for private security firms to sabotage and discredit critics. Now, those proposals were leaked to the web by a group of hackers. And one idea in this bag of dirty tricks campaign was submit false information to WikiLeaks in hopes of damaging the site's credibility. Another important idea was threaten the careers of WikiLeaks supporters or important journalists covering the story. Now, one person mentioned by name was Salon's Glenn Greenwald. They said he was a critical linchpin, and if he could be intimidated, then the rest of the press would go along. Let me give you the quote. The leaked presentation said, "Without the support of people like Glenn, WikiLeaks would fold." Look, they get it. If you can intimidate whistleblowers and the press who cover them, then you can suppress damaging information and go on doing whatever illicit activity it is that you want to hide from the public. And joining me now is Glenn Greenwald himself. So apparently it didn't work with you. You're not intimidated, are you?
Well, no, but I do think that the proposals are worth taking seriously given the players involved. You have several internet security firms that are among the most significant and credible in this industry who do millions of dollars of work for the Pentagon, for the intelligence agencies, for large corporations. And you have the large law firm, Hunton & Williams, which is one of the most well-connected lobbying and legal firms in Washington, D.C., that was recommended to the Bank of America by the Justice Department. And then these proposals are being developed on behalf of two of the largest and most powerful corporate entities in the country, the bank and the Chamber of Commerce. So when you put all those forces together, it would be foolish not to take it seriously, especially since this seems to be a common sort of thing that happens in this world.
Glenn, what was their plan? I mean, how are they going to go after you? How are they going to go after the other journalists?
Well, I mean, I think, for one thing, a lot of journalists do work for large media outlets and corporations that can easily be threatened and bullied and intimidated in all sorts of ways. People who have tried to be more independent in terms of their journalism, such as myself, I think it would be a lot more difficult to try and do that too. But when you're talking about using government agencies and using people who investigate on the internet, and they're talking about things like finding out what people's family members do on the internet, where they go, what they do, gathering information about people is something that lots of resourceful firms and certainly the government is able to do in order to intimidate or threaten or deter people from engaging in advocacy.
So let's talk about how common you think this is. I mean, obviously we see it in this case of corporate America. They say, of course, Bank of America says they're not involved, right? I mean, it's their law firm. The law firm seems to hire these securities people, but once it goes on the press, they're like, what?
Right.
Law firm, what name so, right?
Right.
But it's not just the banks and the corporations, it's also the government. You say that Obama's been tougher on whistleblowers than Bush. Really? Is that true?
Well, as you indicated in the introduction, it's actually the New York Times in a news article, not even an op-ed, that documented that as aggressive as the Bush administration was in trying to prevent transparency being brought to government, the Obama administration has been infinitely more aggressive in punishing whistleblowers. And what makes it so remarkable is that candidate Obama, when he was running for office, lavished praise on whistleblowers. He called them patriotic and courageous, and said that we need to encourage rather than stifle whistleblowing as a means of uncovering corruption and waste and deceit in government. And yet President Obama, as is often the case in so many issues, seems like the enemy of candidate Obama because the Justice Department has been unleashed to punish and prosecute and detect a whole slew of whistleblowers who have exposed government wrongdoing in ways that we ought to be grateful for, not trying to put them in prison.
Well, Don Rumsfeld the other day was bragging about, hey, you know what, we got him to do so many of the things that we were pushing for in the Bush administration when it comes to the war on terror. So he was basically going around going, what now? What now? So let me pose that question to you. What do you think happened between candidate Obama and President Obama?
Well, I mean, one of the things that we were just talking about at the beginning was this sort of consortium of corporate and government power. And I think it's very important to realize that there is a permanent power faction in Washington that has nothing to do with elections. And it sounds radical when you say that, but Dwight Eisenhower warned 55 years ago of the military-industrial complex that would be more powerful than elected officials. The last year, the Washington Post documented what it called Top Secret America, this sprawling consortium of government and corporate factions that are so unaccountable that nobody even knows what they're doing. This is really the powerful faction that runs Washington. And so even if Obama wanted to, and I think it's a huge question whether he does, it would be very difficult to come in and start challenging that. And what the national security state cares most about is being able to operate behind a wall of secrecy. And that's what the Obama Justice Department is protecting through these whistleblower prosecutions.
All right, Glenn, real quick, let me ask you one last question, because look, we see it everywhere, and you see it in the Pentagon too. As soon as the Rolling Stone article comes out, all these anonymous sources saying, oh, no, I don't know about that, etc. So how do we get beyond such institutional power?
Well, I mean, you do have instances of individual acts of journalism, like Michael Hastings, who reported on what General McChrystal really was, on what the military is doing in Afghanistan, and that's why you see this group of government officials anonymously and media figures amplifying it, attacking him and trying to smear his reputation. You see the same thing happening with WikiLeaks, with whistleblowers. So the very few entities who are actually trying to bring transparency to what's going on end up being assaulted, having their character destroyed, and that's what these plans were about. That just got released.
Right. So I want the audience to realize that, because that's a cue for people. The minute something damaging comes out about people in power, the first thing they do is, oh, attack the source. Oh, they must have done something wrong, whether it's a sex crime in Assange's case that just happened to come out at the same exact time, whether it's all these things. So don't necessarily believe the hype. Glenn Greenwald has been covering this courageously. We thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.